when the world is in crisis. And people are looking for hope and answers. Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world. Swadika, very good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World Tonight. I'm Nad Bunag.
I'm Tulip Naksaphoplao, and tonight we're going to start with one of the biggest story today, biggest news. Just earlier today, around just before 1 p.m., there was a report of some explosion in Samut Prakan province. It's resulted in 3 deaths and over 50 people injured. 3 people were killed, 1 at the scene, 2 at the hospital. And it was NGV gas leak from a pipeline and ignited opposite a temple in Bangkok district of Samut Prakan province. Officials from PTT PLC, which owns the pipeline, are at the scene in Preng sub-district to discover the cause of the gas leak at the gas station. Meanwhile, the officials from the Department of Pollution Control have been on the site to check the hazardous substances which may have been left at the scene for the explosion and which may threaten the health of people in the neighborhood. An official from the Department of Pollution Control said that the NGV gas is normally completely burned, leaving only soot, which may be carried away by wind to areas far away from the scene of the explosion. Rescue workers and fire trucks rushed to the scene and helped evacuate residents and students from the community next to the temple to the office of the Tambon Administration Organization or temporary refuge, foreign temporary refuge. And right now we got the report that there is about 23 houses and buildings that has been damaged, 23 cars, and 16 motorcycles, along with many other things.
And another big story for today, the Prime Minister has finally kept to his promise he made on the televised address last night to lift the severe state of emergency. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha issued an announcement today lifting the state of severe emergency in Bangkok, which was declared on October 16th, on the grounds that the situation has eased. The announcement was published in the Royal Gazette and became effective at 12 p.m. today. At the same time, the Civil Court has accepted petitions challenging the legitimacy of the declaration of a state of emergency for consideration. The 3 petitions were submitted by Democrat MP Wattara Phetthong and a retired chief judge of the Pattaya Court, Pheu Thai MP Cholanan Seekeo, and 3 associates and by the anti-government Free Youth Movement. The petition filed with the Civil Court by Wattara and the former judge Kasem Supasit also demanded that legal action must be taken against the Prime Minister and Police General Suwat Jang Yotsuk, the National Police Chief and the head of the Joint Command for the Administration of the Emergency Situation. Mr. Kasem told the media that he filed a petition yesterday seeking an official copy of the ruling by the Civil Court. It will be used as evidence to back a petition to be filed with the Constitutional Court to initiate legal action against the Prime Minister for allegedly violating the Constitution regarding the declaration of a state of emergency. A number of students from Thammasat and Chulalongkorn universities gathered at the Civil Court this morning to hear the court's ruling. Pheu Thai MP Cholanan and his lawyer also showed up. He told the media that he expects the court to issue a stay on the enforcement of the rules set out in the state of emergency announcement. He further said that the Prime Minister's promise to lift the state of emergency soon came too late, adding that his appeal for the protesters to take a step back is also useless because the situation has already moved beyond that point. So that's the latest on the severe state of emergency, which has finally been lifted.
So even though the severe state of emergency is lifted, what is still here is the emergency decree, which was in effect since March because of the anti-COVID measures. So the journalist has asked the Deputy Prime Minister Wisanu Keruengam about the emergency decree, whether it will be extended again for another month. And he said, yes, it will be extended. So they asked him about the ban on gathering. He said that the gathering ban, it's never really in his mind because it's supposed to be the one that the Prime Minister issued last week. It was for political purposes. So Deputy Prime Minister Wisanu Keruengam said that the COVID-19 emergency decree will definitely be extended again, since it is an important part of the pandemic control for the whole country. It does not ban political gatherings. The current version of emergency decree will due to expire in October 31st. Another 1 month extension of the COVID-related state of emergency would be the 7th since the initial order in March. The emergency rules allow the government to enforce mandatory quarantine and to streamline disease control plans without having to seek multiple approvals from various agencies. Mr. Wisanu said that, however, that the gathering ban can always be introduced if necessary. But he has not added to the emergency decree yet because it is for dealing with COVID-19. Deputy Prime Minister added that the more recent state of emergency specific to Bangkok and which the Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha lifted today was related to the protests, which are a matter of national security.
And speaking of the recent protests, we have seen many protest leaders being arrested. But this morning, the Pathumwan District Court ordered the unconditional release of one protest leader this morning. Protest leader Mai Pasarawali Thanakit Wibunphol told the media after her release that the court agreed to set her free because it felt that her alleged offenses carry light penalties on conviction, and because she's a student, the court said that she needs to study to prepare for her final exams. She said that she was not satisfied with the way police arrested her last night, adding that plainclothes officers approached her on a motorcycle and asked her to stop without showing any police ID or a court-issued arrest warrant. She added that police should have arrested her during the day when she went to the university. After her arrest near the Victory Monument at the end of the protest last night, Mai was escorted to the Region 1 Border Patrol Police Camp in Pathum Thani Province for questioning. She was taken to Pathumwan District Court today to seek the court's permission to remand her in custody for a further 12 days pending investigation. Previously, Mai has been summoned by Chana Songkhram police to acknowledge charges relating to her involvement in the protest at the Democracy Monument on August 3rd, along with 5 other protesters. Mai Pasarawali began her political activism back in 2015 after the mass arrest of university students and political activists in front of the Bangkok Art and Cultural Center, where a rally was held to mark the 1-year anniversary of the coup d'etat back in 2014, which was led by General Prayut Chan-o-cha and his clique. Back then, she was part of a group who called themselves Mahanakhon for Democracy Group and joined forces with many other student groups to call for democracy in Thailand. Later on, she became one of the members of the Free People Movement. Mai Pasarawali was one of the 12 protest leaders of the Khanak Rasadon group that were summoned for breaching the state of emergency. Meanwhile, 2 political activists have been summoned by police to acknowledge charges at Thong Law and Samranrat police stations. Sombat Bunyam Narong was summoned to Thong Law police station on October 27th to acknowledge charges of violating conditions of the emergency decree. He was accused of shouting "Prayut, get out" at the Asol BTS skywalk. Another activist, Atapon Buapat, is wanted by Samranrat police for alleged harassment and intimidation and is to report to police on October 26th.
So when Mai was going to get arrested last night, the Facebook page, one of the Facebook page that joined in this protest, did the live broadcast. So a lot of people was witnessing the way the police was trying to negotiate and take her to the police station. So it's become a big news last night. So one of the conditions of the protesters is to have the special parliamentary session to discuss the charter change. But some experts believe that there is a possibility that this parliamentary session will just going to be another time-buying tactic.
Most observers hold little hope that next week's extraordinary parliamentary session will lead to concrete solutions satisfactory to both sides in Thailand's ongoing political conflict. Critics said the move to discuss student-led protesters' demands in parliament was just the latest effort by the government to buy time. The crucial point remains whether Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, as the focus of conflict, would cave in to protesters' ultimatum to step down. The anti-establishment protesters make 3 demands: for Prayut and his government to quit, for changes to the constitution, and for reform of the monarchy. They later added 2 more demands: stop prosecuting protesters and release all those arrested without condition, and lift the state of emergency, in which finally happened today. The parliament is set to be recalled for an extraordinary session on October 26th to the 27th. Experts doubt any solutions will come from that, and it might be just an attempt by Prayut and his government to run away from their responsibilities and push the burden onto parliament. However, experts see that even the session turns into a political face-off, it can hopefully let off some steam and maintain the relevance of this controversial legislator. Meanwhile, the opposition parties were doubtful that the parliamentary meeting could help end the crisis. They said the government and the Senate had yet to show any sign they were sincere about amending the constitution. Critics say the move to shift the conflict off the streets and into parliament may have come too late. Public faith in parliamentarians was eroded when they ignored protesters' demands and delayed a vote on charter change proposals. Instead, they set up a panel to study the proposals in a move widely criticized as a delaying tactic. A political scientist said if the parliament passed the charter change drafts in the first reading last month, the protest movement may have quickly lost momentum. The delay led to a big rally on October 14th. Then came the severe state of emergency on the next day, which made the protesters continue to rally for 6 consecutive days in defiance of the decree. Some observers said the extraordinary session could turn into a grilling session for Prayut over the use of force against peaceful protesters and his decision to declare the severe state of emergency. There may be even loud calls for him to step down. Others predict a déjà vu scenario in which yet another solution-finding committee is set up, drawing accusations of another delaying tactic to extend the government's time in power. A similar ad hoc panel was set up in July to hear voices from the anti-government movement after their second round of protests. The panel was boycotted by the opposition MPs and the protesters. At the end, their report was published in August and offered no concrete solutions or plans to ease the situation.
So I guess we'll know next week whether they're going to set up another panel and then wait until the report be published and suggest anything, or they're going to really go ahead and really do something about the charter.
Definitely. And just so you know, these are the stories we've also been following. Thailand recorded 10 new cases of COVID-19 today, who returned from Taiwan, Yemen, the Netherlands, Belgium, Japan, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. All of them are now under state quarantine. The new cases brought the total number of infections to 3,719, with up to 19 new recoveries and no new fatalities. The COVID-19 test results for the first batch of Chinese tourists who traveled using the special tourist visa reported no positive cases. According to the Tourism and Sports Minister, another group of Chinese tourists are scheduled to arrive on October 26th and the 28th, while Scandinavian travelers will arrive in November. The ministry also revealed that the government is ready to implement a more relaxed quarantine if a new flow of tourists arrive without any positive cases. However, this requires approval from the CCSA first. Thailand is officially entering the cold season today as temperatures in the northern, northeastern, central, and eastern regions drop below 23 degrees. According to the Deputy Director General of the Meteorological Department, there may be scattered light rain over the upper part of the country, and the southern region is entering its rainy season.
So every time any country in the state that's not normal, like in Thailand right now, we are having some kind of political crisis, or before that we were dealing with COVID, media is one of the institutions that people actually scrutinize. And there's always someone complain or admire something about media. And it sometimes can become a political tool or can become a target for a certain group of people. Today we have the mass communication and the journalism academic with us, Dr. Jessada Salathong, the lecturer from the Faculty of Communication Arts, Chulalongkorn University in the line. Good evening, Dr. Jessada. Good evening.
Dr. Jessada, can you hear us?
Okay, the reason that we asked him to join us today because earlier we have a news in Thailand that some media have been clamped down, one of which is Voice TV that was ordered by the state of emergency to just shut down all its online platforms. But then later on, the court actually overturned that order. But in between that, there was another three media, which is the Reporters, the Standard, and Pracha Thai, that were also almost get a shutdown order as well. So there's a lot of people cry out about whether this is the way to do it, whether they are being censored by the government. So that's the reason why we are having Dr. Jessada in line with us today. สวัสดีค่ะ
Dr. Jessada สวัสดีค่ะ
Okay, สวัสดีครับ Good evening.
ค่ะ so from what have been going on with the attempt of the digital ministry trying to shut down some media, citing the state of emergency, do you think such measures reflects anything from the government point of view?
Well, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So last week we have this news that the digital ministry was trying to shut down some certain media, citing the state of emergency. So some people think that it may be just a viewpoint from the government. So do you think that reflect any viewpoint from the government, the way they look at the media?
Well, okay, I'm sorry, actually I couldn't hear you clearly at all because there are so many noises and echoes.
All right.
So can you hear me, right?
Yes,
Yes,
I
we can hear you very clearly, but I'm not sure if you can still hear us.
Okay, so actually, this is the question also is the reason that the government attempts to this such issue. Maybe first of all, they want to stop the possible mobility of the protesters. They may estimate that the way that they did may block or may delay the ability of the protesters. At the same time, they might also want to give a big warning to other media that if they support the speech that can be used by the protesters, if not, they may face the same what they could do.
Okay, so is it going to lead to self-censorship, you think?
Sorry, but there are so many noises. I couldn't hear the question at all.
Okay, how about we going to hang up and then we will get back to you again. We will reconnect and see whether the connection is better. Just bear with us a little bit.
Sorry, is there any way that I can hear the question clearer? There
Okay.
are so many noise. There are so many basic.
We will hang up first, and then we will reconnect with you again. So just to see whether the connection will be better.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So please reconnect again.
Okay. So that is Dr. Jessada Salathong. We were talking about the media clampdown, whether it's going to turn to be self-censorship, whether what the digital ministry was trying to do reflect anything from the government side. And the connection wasn't so good, so we just will try to reconnect with Dr. Jessada again.
But the first question we asked him was about whether it reflected the government side with the way they tried to clamp down the media, whether it's Voice TV, Pracha Thai, the reporters, and the Standard, including another group, which is the Free Youth Group. Because the reason why there was like a clampdown, because it was believed that they were disseminating false information regarding the protest, and that violates the emergency decree, which is already lifted today.
Another important thing that is every time the Reporters Without Borders do the ranking of the countries, safe place for the media or freedom of the speech of the media, Thailand has never been on the top. In another word, we always on a low side of the rank.
And speaking of that, we have always been on the very low side of the rank, no matter which government is in place. But it might be a few changes with the numbers, but most of the time, it's always like at the bottom of the charts. Even though compared to other ASEAN countries, we might seem to do a little bit better, but compared to the rest of the world, we are falling behind. And based on the Reporters Without Borders, they always blame the government, the junta leader, which has put in so much draconian measures that limits the freedom of the media as well as the freedom of expression as well.
Another issue the media has is that every time there is any political crisis, media are a part of the society that has been scrutinized from all sides. Whatever they report, it's going to make some certain side not happy. If you notice, there's a lot of media that not talking about numbers of protesters anymore, because if it's too much, it will make the other side of the story not happy. But if it's too little, it's going to make the protester not happy. So most of the time, a lot of media choose to not giving the crown size at all.
And what they choose to say is that the numbers cannot be independently verified, because if there are no official numbers, there's no way that they could report the numbers.
Okay, now we have Dr. Jessada back into the line again. Now, can you hear us better? A little bit?
Heard you before, but right now it's better. You can continue our talk.
Okay, better now. Okay, so we were talking about self-censorship. Do you think the shutdown by the government or attempted to shut down the media by the government will lead to self-censorship in other media?
Well, actually, if you look at the media landscape in Thailand, especially for the conventional self-censorship, very actually, we have to see the media own, especially television and radio. So if you look at the ownership of the media in Thailand, so they are either owned by the government or owned by a private company, right? And the private company in Thailand have a very strong tie and government. So the often is not in media, this is that. So the culture, I think, I want to irritate you and you to track you. This is in Thai society, especially in so if in search media, that also for the private TV channel, although they not directly belong to the government, but they somehow, like they feel friendly or they feel that like I have to respect or I have to avoid irritation that might happen if I report this kind of information. So self-censorship is quite strong in Thai media culture actually.
Right.
So that's why actually when you talk about the press freedom index, actually one of the criteria that apply for press freedom index. One of them is self-censorship. So that's why this is maybe a reason why Thailand ranks not quite well in press freedom index.
So from what you said, it sounds almost like it's become part of the Thai media culture, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually that's why we need more independent media in order to avoid this kind of
Right.
that is what that's what we broadcasting service free government free from so this one of the so actually the media on online platform which is have more independence and have more freedom then all of this was put in the spot, but that the job I took transfer put in on what my the content.
Okay.
So in your perspective, between the media owned by a big private entity and the government's intervention on the media, which one poses a bigger threat to media freedom?
Well, when we talk about media ownership, especially in Thailand, although many media they don't owned by the government, but sometimes like happened in the party is what happens in Thailand. So although the companies are really privately they express, and they have their different topics. So this kind of like stuff is on the in Thailand.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, doctor. I'm sorry we have to cut it short today, but that's all the time we have. But I think we'll have you back on the show again in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
And that is Dr. Jessada Salathong, the lecturer from the Faculty of Communication Arts at Chulalongkorn University.
And so he just gave us a perspective on media freedom as well as the censorship in light of the political conflict.
And that's all the time we have. This is the tonight edition of Thai PBS Tonight. And we will see you again. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ